Okay, it's that time of the show where we call it Around the Movie Block with The Rock. And here is Rocco Pasafumi with his movie review. So what's cooking in movie land this week, Rocco?
Usually, you're in the middle of August with movies. Usually that tends to be sort of like the bottom of the barrel of this big summer movies. The movie I have for you this week is called The Kitchen. It's directed by Andrea Berloff, and it stars Melissa McCarthy, Tiffany Haddish, and Elizabeth Moss. It is a gangster film. It is based on an adult comic, and it takes place in 1978 Hell's Kitchen. It deals with the wives of New York gangsters, Kathy Brennan, played by McCarthy, Ruby O'Carroll, played by Haddish, and Claire Walsh, played by Moss. They continue the racket of their husbands after they are locked up in prison. I mean, the first thing that stands out about this movie is, given the kind of landscape we have for movies right now, for theatrical movies, is this is actually more of a unique original story. It's not a remake, it's not a sequel, and it's not a reboot or anything. And it's also, yes, it's based on a comic, an adult comic, but it's also one of the more unique original movies that has been out in from a Hollywood studio. This is made by Warner Brothers. So, but yes, this has a great cast. First and foremost, you have Melissa McCarthy, Tiffany Haddish, and Elizabeth Moss, all very well, fine actors. But with this particular movie, unfortunately, given this great cast, the story is a little ridiculous, unfortunately. You don't have much of a firm background with these three women in terms of how they managed to take over their husband's business. You think to yourself, like, why would these wives of all these gangsters, they want to engage in that kind of line of work? And the movie does not do a good job explaining that, unfortunately. So with that in play, you don't really have much identification for these characters. There had been a movie that came out last fall, which was a really well done movie. The movie in mind was called Widows. It came out last fall. It was based on a British TV series, and it was around the same type of situation where the wives are finishing up the line of work for their husbands. And there's a lot of similarity with that, with this particular movie. The difference with this particular movie was that, Widows had fine actors, and the story was a lot more believable. With this movie, unfortunately, the story is very ridiculous, and it doesn't really explain the motives for these characters very, very well. So unfortunately, you have a scenario here that you don't really feel like you identify with these women at all, and I think that makes the movie kind of fall apart. Because you can have great actors. I mean, the one thing about Howie, particularly when it comes to movies, he loves casts. He loves fantastic actors. But I can only tell so much of how great a movie is. Unfortunately, with this movie, the cast is completely wasted with this story. Because the characters are they fall apart, and you feel like you can't really identify with their characters and what they go through, and you can't really, especially with these characters that are kind of anti-heroes, you want to have characters that you can identify with, especially with these dark characters. And, like by the end of the movie, you don't really feel much sort of passion for what these characters go through by the climax when they kind of get their comeuppance. So unfortunately, for these three, these three stars, it's just not one of the better gangster movies that you have. And that's kind of sad coming from a Hollywood movie, because you don't see a lot of these movies now that are more original. So unfortunately, you have a wasted cast and a movie, kind of a gangster story that really does not really stand up very, very well. So unfortunately, I have to give The Kitchen 2 out of 5 stars. So thank you.
Okay, thank you, Rocco. And that is the movie review for the week. Okay, we had an amazing show today. Howie Riesenberg talked about the beach and the sand, saving our beaches, and Howie also talked about his law with made sure defibrillators are at every high school and all over New York and saved thousands of lives. So we enjoyed Howie Riesenberg. And then we had special guests, Vlad and Lester, who are two creative geniuses that have collaborated for several books. The latest, Beyond the Swirl animation project, which is amazing. And they talked about some of their previous projects like Invisible, which has really touched a lot of people who feel invincible, who got to express their stories. So we really, really enjoyed having Lester and Vlad, who shared their great projects. And we love having people who on the show who are so creative, who have such brilliant minds, who tap into the universe of people's minds and where they are, and it was really fascinating, and we look forward to having them on in the future as they delve into future products. And Rocco Pasafumi talked about a movie called The Kitchen, and he explained why he wasn't too crazy about it. But anyway, I also want to close by wishing everyone a very happy Labor Day weekend. Be safe out there and enjoy the holiday weekend with your friends and family. And we'll be back in 2 weeks on Broadcasting on the Beach. But we really, really enjoyed tonight's show and having some very talented people on our show. We really, really enjoyed it. So with that, we wrap with this. My name is Halftime. I want to thank you for your time. Please join us next Sunday for another edition of Halftime. But at this time, we are out of time. See you next Sunday.